I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are stepping into a massive arena. You walk right up to the edge of a brightly lit boxing ring, and the crowd is just absolutely roaring. We're gearing up for a heavyweight championship fight.
Oh, yeah, the ultimate prize fight.
All right. But instead of boxers in the corners, we actually have books.
Which, I mean, is really the best way to frame what we're looking at today.
Definitely. So in one corner, wearing the classic 1980 trunks, we have the undisputed genre-defining champion of the espionage thriller, Robert Ludlum's The Bourne Identity.
The absolute classic.
And then in the other corner, we have the 2026 challenger stepping into the spotlight. Ghassan Jawhar's massive modern-era hit, The Man Who Vanished. So we've got 200 men, two intense identity crises.
And two completely different architectural blueprints for keeping a reader glued to the page.
And that is the crucial part for this deep dive. We aren't just trading subjective opinions about, which book we liked more. We're actually working from an incredibly detailed literary strategy essay that puts both of these novels under a microscopic quantitative lens.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
The mission here is to explore exactly how a brand new story competes with an old iconic one. So we're going to look at hardcore numerical statistics, readability metrics, and psychological capability scores to figure out exactly who wins this matchup.
Because the numbers really reveal this hidden layer of storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, they show us the literal math behind how authors manipulate our brains,
Right.
how they dictate the velocity of our reading, and how they engineer very specific emotional reactions.
So whether you are an aspiring writer trying to crack the code or an avid reader who wants to know why you just couldn't put that last book down, or honestly just someone fascinated by the psychology of storytelling, you are about to learn the exact machinery behind what keeps you turning pages.
It's all in the data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's start with what the source calls the tail of the tape. To understand how Ludlum and Jawhar control your experience, we have to look at the raw data of their sentences. And the first thing that jumps out is just the sheer physical demand Ludlum places on the reader.
Oh, it is a massive commitment. I mean, the Bourne Identity clocks in anywhere from like 180,000 to 200,000 words.
Wow.
Yeah, and he spreads that across just 31 chapters.
That is dense.
Very. And then Jawhar, writing for a 2026 audience, basically cuts that volume in half. The Man Who Vanished is roughly 98,000 to 105,000 words, but he spreads it over 37 chapters.
Meaning Jawhar's chapters are significantly shorter.
Exactly.
So the reader is getting those little hits of dopamine from the chapter breaks way more frequently.
Which naturally increases the feeling of velocity. You feel like you're flying through it.
Right.
But the speed isn't just about chapter breaks. It's actually baked right into the syllables. The source breaks down their Flesch-Kincaid grade levels.
And for those unfamiliar, Flesch-Kincaid essentially measures cognitive friction.
Right. It calculates how many syllables are packed into each word and how many words are stretching out each sentence.
So the higher the number, the more working memory your brain has to use just to reach the end of a thought.
Precisely. And Ludlum's Flesch-Kincaid score sits at a very dense 8.5 to 9.5.
Which makes sense for 1980.
It does. But Jawhar drops that readability down to a 7.2, so he is actively writing about 1.5 to 2 grades lower.
Wow.
Yeah, when you look at the Flesch reading ease scale, Jawhar's prose is roughly 5 to 10% easier for the brain to process.
I want to dig into how he actually achieves that drop in friction, because the essay highlights two specific grammatical choices that are super interesting: passive voice and vocabulary density.
The passive voice stat is wild.
It really is. Ludlum uses passive voice about 12% of the time, but Jawhar drops that to 8%. That is a 30% reduction in passive voice.
Just to put that into perspective for everyone, passive voice is when the subject of the sentence is being acted upon, right? Rather than taking the action.
Right.
So instead of saying the assassin fired the gun, it's the gun was fired by the assassin.
Right. It just sort of slows the energy down.
Exactly. It sounds minor, but when you reduce passive voice by 30%, you are injecting this massive amount of kinetic, forward-moving energy into the prose.
Right. The subjects in Jawhar's book are always actively doing things.
Yes, they are constantly pushing the narrative forward.
And that's coupled with the vocabulary density, too. Because Jawhar uses 12% complex vocabulary compared to Ludlum's 18%.
And shorter sentences overall. Jawhar averages like 14 words a sentence versus Ludlum's 16 to 18.
You know what really makes me think of dining?
Oh, how so?
Well, reading Ludlum is like sitting down for this heavy, complex, multi-course feast. Like, it is undeniably delicious. but you are chewing through some seriously dense syntax.
Right. It requires a real commitment of time and energy.
Exactly. But Jawar is serving up this perfectly portioned, modern-tasting menu. Those shorter sentences basically act like palate cleansers.
That is a great analogy.
You get these high-impact flavors, but you don't suffer from what the source calls linguistic fatigue.
That tasting menu analogy is actually highly accurate, especially when we look at the sensory data.
Oh, right, the sense stuff.
Yeah, so Ludlum builds his world primarily through visual and auditory cues. You know, the flash of a muzzle, the sound of footsteps on pavement.
Classic thriller stuff.
Right. But Jawar introduces a completely different flavor profile. He relies heavily on olfactory information. Scent is literally used as a primary narrative device.
Which is just such a wild choice for a thriller. But the source breaks down this four-act olfactory architecture that Jawar uses, and it makes total sense mechanically.
It's brilliant.
Because he doesn't just mention smells for atmosphere, he weaponizes them.
The biology behind it is actually fascinating. So the olfactory bulb has a direct neural link to the amygdala and the hippocampus.
Which are the brain's centers for emotion and memory.
Exactly. Scent literally bypasses the logical processing centers of the neocortex.
Wow.
So by using this 4X structure, first establishing a baseline scent of safety, then introducing a foreign scent to signal danger, associating that scent with drama, and then finally using it as a trigger for the climax, Jawar forces the reader to feel primal fear without needing to write these dense paragraphs of visual exposition.
Right, it's essentially a biological hack to keep the readability score breezy while still delivering this deep, visceral punch.
Exactly.
And, that linguistic accessibility, the fact that Jawar's sentences are less complex and more direct, it actually mirrors his protagonist perfectly.
Oh, absolutely.
Because unlike Jason Bourne, who is this incredibly complex, highly trained human weapon, Jawar's protagonist, Gus, is basically just ordinary.
The contrast between the two protagonists is arguably the most compelling part of this whole analysis.
I totally agree.
Both are 30-something men experiencing these profound identity crises. But the nature of those crises couldn't be more different. Look at Bourne. His amnesia is imposed on him violently from the outside. He is pulled from the Mediterranean Sea with bullets in his back. He has no memory of who trained him or what his crimes even are.
Right. He is entirely a victim of his circumstances. His identity was effectively stolen from him.
Yes. But Gus, on the other hand, faces a crisis that emerges entirely from the inside.
Yeah. He's a Middle Eastern perfume shop owner.
Yeah.
He remembers everything about his life.
Right.
But then he makes this discovery in an Egyptian cave that completely shatters his understanding of himself. He realizes he has this terrible capacity for things he never even imagined.
Which means Gus is complicit in his own transformation. Bourne is trying to find out what was done to him, but Gus knows exactly what he is choosing to do.
Right, he crosses ethical boundaries. He actively lies to his wife. He allows himself to be tempted by that mysterious woman, Lisa.
Exactly.
I really want to look closely at the quantitative capability gap the source lays out here, because this is where the traditional thriller formula gets turned completely upside down.
Oh, the stats on this are so funny.
They give these characters out of 10 ratings for their skills. So Bourne is a 10 out of 10 in combat.
Yeah, true.
Is a 10 out of 10 with weapons, 10 out of 10 in infiltration, and 10 out of 10 in evasion.
The ultimate apex predator of the espionage genre.
Exactly. But then you have Gus. Gus is given a 3 out of 10 in combat.
Yep.
He's a 2 out of 10 in weapons handling. And he's a 6 out of 10 in tradecraft. I mean, he is a total amateur who is quite literally making it up as he goes along.
Just flying by the seat of his pants.
Now, I have to push back on this strategy a little bit. Because if I'm picking up a high-stakes thriller, a part of me really wants the hyper-competent 10 out of 10 guy.
Sure, you want a power fantasy.
Yeah. It feels incredibly frustrating to read about an amateur who fumbles a 2 out of 10 weapons check when heavily armed mercenaries are literally kicking down the door.
It is a massive risk for an author to take. We are heavily conditioned by decades of pop culture to crave that superhero archetype. We really want the catharsis of competence. But the source argues that Jawar's 2 out of 10 amateur rating is a highly calculated move to completely flip the reader's emotional state.
Wait, walk me through the mechanics of that flip. How does that work?
So when you read Ludlum, the primary emotion you feel toward Bourne is awe. You are watching a finely tuned machine operate at absolute peak efficiency.
Right.
There is immense comfort in that competence. When three guys corner Bourne in an alley, you know he's going to win. The suspense is just, how cool will he look doing it?
Yeah, you're just waiting for the choreography.
Exactly. But when you read Jawar, You aren't admiring a machine. You are forced into a state of deep, uncomfortable empathy.
Oh, I see.
When three guys corner Gus, he hesitates. He stumbles. He misses his shot. The suspense completely changes from how cool will he look to how on earth is this vulnerable, fragile human going to survive this?
Wow, that shift from awe to empathy completely changes the engine of the plot.
Complete.
And the reason a 2 out of 10 amateur even tries to fight those three guys in an alley brings us to probably the most significant statistical divide between the two books.
Their moral framework.
Right. Why are they fighting in the first place?
The motivation statistics reveal two completely different worldviews. Bourne scores a 9 out of 10 for self-interested action and a remarkably low 2 out of 10 for altruism.
He is fighting purely for survival.
Almost entirely. He destroys the conspiracy because the conspiracy is actively trying to kill him. It is an honest, visceral, and deeply self-interested motivation.
Right.
But Gus's metrics are an exact inversion of that. Gus scores a 9 out of 10 for altruism and a 1 out of 10 for self-defense.
So Gus is actively putting himself in the line of fire when he absolutely doesn't have to.
Exactly.
He wages a silent war against corruption, he exposes drug lords, and he protects cultural heritage for total strangers. He is taking these massive risks with a 2 out of 10 weapon skill strictly to protect innocent populations.
And the defining variable that makes those risks so agonizing for the reader is the family anchor.
Right, the family's stats are crazy.
The source gives Ludlum a 2 out of 10 for family presence. Bourne operates in almost total isolation. He has no domestic foundation to worry about.
Nothing holding him back.
Right. Jawar scores a 9.5 out of 10. Gus has a wife. He has 2 kids, and he has this hidden object in his house, that physical artifact from the cave that acts as a tangible tether, linking his dangerous new life to his very fragile domestic one.
The family isn't just background noise. It is the entire narrative engine.
Exactly.
It actually makes perfect sense that Bourne has a 2 out of 10 for family presence. I mean, weapons don't have families.
Right.
Bourne's isolation is precisely what allows him to be a ruthlessly efficient 10 out of 10 operator. He's a lone wolf backed into a corner.
That's a great way to put it.
But Gus is a guard dog. He is protecting the house. And the stakes feel so much higher because when Bourne risks his life, he is only risking himself. But when Gus takes a bullet, he is actively gambling his children's father.
Which creates a fascinating structural problem for Jawar.
How so?
Well, if you have an amateur protagonist who is constantly gambling his family's future and he is genuinely terrible at fighting, the anxiety generated by that combination is immense.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you keep the reader from literally just putting the book down out of sheer stress?
Right. This brings us right to the pacing stats. Let's look at how these two authors structure the adrenaline of the thrill ride.
Right.
And ultimately, who takes the crown on the strategy scorecard.
The source analyzes their suspense structures, and they are radically different. Ludlum relies on what they call sustained tension.
Right.
His average suspense level sits at a relentless 75 to 80% throughout the entire 200,000-word manuscript.
Wow.
He offers almost no recovery chapters. Once you strap in, the ride just doesn't slow down.
Which, while thrilling, can honestly lead to serious reader fatigue over that many pages.
Absolutely.
The human nervous system simply gets numb to sustain stress like that.
It becomes an endurance test. But Jawar, clearly optimizing for a modern audience, utilizes a peak-valley structure. His overall average suspense is much lower, sitting at 68.5%. However, his peak suspense during major action sequences spikes to a staggering 98%.
Wow, so he builds a steeper roller coaster.
Exactly.
He drops the reader from a much higher, more terrifying altitude, but then he explicitly provides a valley, a quieter domestic chapter so the reader's nervous system can emotionally recover before the next massive drop.
It completely mitigates reader fatigue while maximizing the impact of the action. It's so smart.
It really is. And then we look at the originality metrics. Ludlum scores a massive 9.5 for essentially inventing the amnesiac assassin subgenre back in 1980.
Oh, it was a total paradigm shift for thrillers.
Huge. But Jawar manages to score a 9.6 today.
Which is incredible.
Earning a 9.6 in 2026 when every thriller trope has been done to death is a massive achievement.
It really is.
The source attributes that to his genre hybridity.
Yeah.
Seamlessly weaving a psychological thriller with espionage and domestic drama.
Plus, he brings a highly authentic Middle Eastern perspective to a genre that has been overwhelmingly dominated by Western voices for decades.
Right. And plus that biological hack of the olfactory architecture we discussed earlier.
Yeah, the sense stuff is just so unique. So
Yeah.
when the Strategy Bureau tallies all these metrics, the final composite scores tell a very nuanced story.
Drumroll, please.
Right. So Ludlum absolutely wins on pure espionage execution. When it comes to tradecraft, operational details, and vast conspiracies, he beats Jawar 9.5 to 9.
So the 1980 champion retains his title in the tactical arena.
Undoubtedly. But Jawar takes a victory on psychology, winning 9.1 to 8.5.
Okay.
He wins on narrative pacing, 9.2 to 8.5, and he sweeps the moral framework and family anchor categories.
Wow.
So when you average it all out, the 2026 challenger edges out the victory. Jawar takes a 9.0 out of 10 compared to Ludlum's 8.8.
Man, it's an incredibly tight decision.
Very close.
But looking at those final numbers forces me to ask a pretty philosophical question.
Okay, what is it?
If Jawar wins the statistical battle, does that actually make The Man Who Vanished a fundamentally better story? Or is it simply a highly optimized product engineered perfectly for a modern, easily distracted audience?
That is the million-dollar question right there. And the essay addresses this directly. They make a really critical distinction.
Okay.
These two novels aren't rivals in the sense that one renders the other obsolete. They basically represent two different modes of the exact same genre, built to serve very different reader values.
That makes a lot of sense.
Ludlum delivered a masterwork of the pure espionage thriller. You know, it's dense, it is hyper-focused, and it provides the deep comfort of a protagonist's lawful, unstoppable competence.
Right.
Jawar delivered a masterwork of the literary philosophical thriller. It is highly accessible, incredibly ambitious in its sensory mechanics, and it thrives on the deep discomfort of a protagonist's flawed humanity.
It is the stark difference between a professional killer who never had a choice in his fate and an amateur father who has total agency. You know, he makes profound choices, some of them terrible, some of them heroic, and just has to live with the consequences.
Exactly. And their endings reflect those core philosophies so well.
Absolutely.
Ludlum answers his premise by having Bourne survive and dismantle the external conspiracy. It offers a hopeful, definitive resolution.
Right.
Jawar answers his premise with a man returning to his family, deeply fractured by his internal discoveries. The immediate danger passes, but the psychological story never truly ends.
What a journey this comparison has been. I mean, we started this deep dive looking at Ludlum's dense, relentless 1980s prose, unpacking the Flesch-Kincaid friction of a story where the protagonist is a 10 out of 10 human weapon with no memory.
Yeah.
And we laid that right next to Jawar's accessible, low-friction, peak-valley pacing of 2026, where a flawed 2 out of 10 amateur father uses his internal crisis to protect total strangers.
Both novels are undeniably unforgettable. They both keep you aggressively turning the page. They just utilize entirely different mathematical, linguistic, and psychological tools to force you to do it.
They really do. It makes you reflect on your own media diet, you know.
For sure.
The next time you sit down with a thriller, think about what you are actually seeking out. Do you want to escape into the comforting evidence of a Jason Bourne? Or are you drawn to the messy, agonizing courage of a guy like Gus, who is terrified, severely out of his depth, but forces himself to do the right thing anyway?
It reveals quite a bit about what we value, or perhaps what we need to feel at different points in our lives.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, there is one lingering, unresolved thread from the ending of Jawar's novel that I just cannot stop thinking about.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
It completely subverts everything we expect from a traditional thriller resolution.
You're talking about the open thread regarding the Egyptian cave.
Yes. The ending is so haunting. Gus survives the physical ordeal. He goes back home to his wife and his 2 kids. But he is actively lying to them.
Right.
He is keeping that artifact hidden in his house. And he is lying to the people he loves most about what he's truly become capable of.
It's so dark.
But that isn't even the most unsettling part. The revelation is that somewhere out there in the world, another person has made the exact same discovery Gus made in that cave.
A completely unknown variable.
What?
I mean, Gus has no idea who they are, where they are, or what their moral framework is.
Right. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on.
Right.
Jason Bourne's absolute worst nightmare was losing his memory. You know, not knowing what he was capable of.
Right.
But Jawar flips that fear on its head.
Right.
What if the scariest part of an identity crisis isn't losing your memory at all? What if the scariest part is keeping it? Knowing exactly who you are, fully understanding the terrible power you've discovered within yourself, and knowing for a fact that there is someone else out there with your exact same capability, and you have absolutely no idea if they're going to use it to save the world or to burn it down.
You are literally just sitting in your quiet house waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Waiting for the bell to ring for the next round. Thanks for stepping into the ring with us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.